Now, how the hell are you?
I'm not doing too bad.
We're not living together anymore. Because last time we recorded, we were living together.
That is true. It took you 4 months to edit that podcast.
Yeah, I'm not good at editing that. You've heard that podcast, though. It's hard to edit because everyone was at different volumes.
Yeah, we should talk about that. That was like a nightmare of a recording session.
Yes.
We couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, we tried to record it like using 2 computers.
Instead of getting the best possible sound quality, it just didn't work. So we just ended up having a fucking Blue Yeti in the middle of the table. So it kind of sounds a bit tin canny. So sorry for that, almost adult fans.
Yeah, it was usable at the end of the day.
So Gage offered to take me on a tour.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. We went on the Warner Brothers lot with our good friends Amin and Vibsy Pop.
Gage, I have to say, all right, I have a confession to make.
Sure.
I was kind of putting off going on that tour for like a month.
Why is that?
I didn't really want to.
Why is that?
I didn't know what it was. I thought it would be something boring. So I put it off for like a month. But I will say, Gage.
Yes.
You were a great tour guide. It was a lot of fun.
Hey, appreciate that, man. Yeah, we had a lot of fun. We went to the Friends couch. You acted in the Friends show.
And Joey Tribbiani.
Yeah, you were Joey Tribbiani. You looked the part. And we also hiked over at Griffith Park, right?
Gage, I will say, I have another thing to say about this. You're the only other man who's packed a sandwich for me. Gage packed a picnic. Motherfucking packed a picnic. This guy, Gage, packed a picnic for another man. It sounds like it's something ridicule-worthy. By the time we got to the top of that mountain, I was so glad you packed that fucking lunch. You made another man a sandwich, which, could be looked down upon by some people.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. It might get a little real, but I feel like whenever we do this podcast, you always want to be funny, when I think you're much funnier when you let yourself be funny.
Well, like I'm trying too hard?
Yeah, basically.
Well, that's a valid criticism because, okay, this is kind of where it stems from. Is I just really, really get uncomfortable when there's, awkward silences. So I always just try to fill it with just talking, and I don't really think before I talk. I don't think I'm, trying to be funny. I just try to talk a lot.
And I think that pauses are valid, especially in this podcast format, because we can edit it out. If it's on a live stream or something, I think that's very valid to keep firing on all cylinders. But
yeah, maybe that's where I'm coming from. And also, I was on another podcast called Sleepycast, and those guys were fucking loud and fast at talking. So I'd have to try to get my input, and I'd be like, Bada!
When I actually started the podcast, I wanted it to be a lot like Sleepy Cabin, but it just kind of evolved from there into sort of a very kind of chill environment, which I like in its own respect.
The radio and stuff that I listen to is usually really relaxing. And I think I'm pretty chill in person.
No, you're a really chill guy. Honestly, I would stop hanging out with you if you were not as chill.
I never get angry though. Ever. I'm never angry.
I'm also never angry either. I feel like there's something wrong with me almost at that point. Because people are like, oh, this guy cut me off in track. I'm like, well, it's Los Angeles. People get cut off all the time. Why should I spend so much energy getting mad about it?
Yeah, I just don't have that bone in my body. We did get angry at my cat recently.
Dude, I need to meet Mango.
You haven't met Mango?
I have not met Mango.
Oh, well, she's kind of a standard cat. You've met a cat, you've met Mango.
All right, well, I guess I don't need to meet Mango anymore.
No, Mango's good.
Speaking of which, the podcast that I recorded with my good friend Kat, I don't know, for the people out there, I'm revolving co-host. I'm kind of trying out new things. And Kat and we recorded an episode with the Breakup podcast. And they talk about breakups. They bring on guests who've been broken up before. And it's a fun little podcast.
You're making people relive their nightmare situations.
I think that's sort of a good thing. Isn't that sort of cathartic, though?
I mean, yeah, actually, you could have a point there. Breakups kind of suck, dude.
Oh, yeah. I've honestly haven't been broken up with too often because I honestly haven't been dating anyone. I've been kind of trying to focus on myself, which I know is a cop-out answer, but...
That's what I'm doing now. But, the thing is, when I have a girlfriend, I never want to break up with them.
I get that, too. I don't think I've ever actually broken up with someone before. I've always been the broke-up-y.
Yeah, well, I have, but only when it's, a terrible situation. I mean, usually, I wouldn't get with someone unless I really like them. It's when they become something that I'm like, okay, this is not what I signed up for, man. I'm out of the door. But usually it's if I like them already, it's I'll stay with them.
If you like Niall, send an email to almostadultspodcast@gmail.com.
I'm single, baby.
All right. So overall, did you enjoy your time with me?
Living?
Oh, well, yeah, that too, and exercising with me.
Okay, so living, first of all, you worked a lot.
Yeah.
Kind of when you came home, I'd go to bed or I'd be working. We didn't end up having a lot of hangout times when we lived together.
No. Maybe that'll change, man.
And then the hiking was fun.
I want to hike more often.
How far up the mountain did we get?
Not too far up, like a mile or so.
That's it?
Yeah.
That felt like forever.
That's because we're out of shape.
But yeah, it was a good time overall. And as I said earlier, I was glad that you packed the sandwich. At first, I was a little bit skeptical of the sandwich, but over time, I learned to love it.
Much like a good relationship, a good sandwich comes with time, preservation, and listening.
Gage, you got the kind of dad vibes about you a little bit.
I do have a very dad vibe about me.
And you're younger than me.
That's true.
But you kind of dadded me up the mountain.
I like encouraging people. I like helping people out. And that's kind of what I want to do with this podcast, in a sense. I want to help people out, and I want to give people something to laugh at and laugh with.
Laugh along, everybody.
And with that, coming up on Almost Adults.
You know, it's hard when, like, two people are really close, but they don't feel the same way. Like, somebody doesn't reciprocate those feelings.
In my mind, emotional maturity is like going through that shit in order to really realize, like, where other people are coming from and how you feel and how not to make the same mistakes.
Well, also, I will say that Eleanor is, like, probably the best friend you will ever have, our other friend. And I say that all the time. Like, you're such a good friend that, like, you should.
My friend Gage is gonna talk to you. Oh, and Kat, oh, Kat, she'll be there, oh, too. Well, they're gonna talk about the things they wanna say, speak about their lives from day to day. They're gonna dive into the nuts and bolts. Welcome y'all to Always Adults.
It's actually Almost Adults. We got it. All right, welcome everybody to Almost Adults. That was my musical intro. How'd you like it, Kat?
It was okay.
Hey guys, remember Kat? She's the co-host now.
Yay! Yeah, I've been here a couple times, and now you get to hear me more.
I'm going to have like a revolving door of co-host, and Kat's going to be one of the mainstays.
I'm so excited.
I'm really excited too. I love hearing your voice, and now I have an excuse to talk to you more.
Thank you. I love hearing my voice too.
And today on the podcast, we have the Breakup Podcast.
Hi.
Riley Billingsley, who has been here before.
Yes, hello.
And Eleanor Drake.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, so we're the co-hosts of the Breakup Podcast.
Tell us a little bit about the Breakup Podcast. Give us the elevator pitch.
The elevator
I
pitch.
feel like you're better at this than I.
So the Breakup Podcast is a podcast about breakups, relationships, and like dealing with adversity in love.
In the hopes that other people will listen and feel connected and help themselves get through a hard time with breakups. And the first two episodes are Eleanor and I talking about our specific breakups, which we also talk about different things that happen with us, dating and relationships throughout different episodes as well. But those are the first two episodes, and then we interview other people about their relationships and their experience going through breakups.
And dating.
Yeah, I've been listening to it, and I have to say I really love it, and it sounds like a really cathartic experience for both you and the interviewees and everybody listening.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, thank you for listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoy it.
What I think is also great about the podcast is it's also the journey of you guys. It's the journey of you guys kind of growing up sort of as people and as
Definitely.
wonderful, I was going to say wonderful human beings, but that's repetitive.
Well, that's very sweet. I guess I haven't heard anybody say that before, but it's true. Like, we've been doing it now for over a year, and I feel like we're really different even from when we first started.
Yeah, I've gone through a breakup on the podcast
Yeah.
since we've started recording, which has been interesting. We've talked about seeing exes and talking to exes and, different dating experiences, and we've talked about it all on the podcast, and it has been really cathartic. It's been really awesome to interview people and feel like we relate to people's experiences and not feel so alone, because that's something that really happens a lot in breakups, is
Right.
you feel really alone, like no one else has ever felt this sad in their entire life. And then by listening, you realize that people have. And it's not just for the brokenhearted. Like, you really just feel that human connection, which is really, really
Yeah.
nice to feel.
I also
Yeah.
think it's a bit voyeuristic.
Yeah.
So if you're not going through a breakup, but like want to listen to some hot goss,
Yeah.
like we're a great podcast for you too.
I do really love drama.
Yeah. So
Oh, same.
yeah, the podcast is fun in that way too, because it's like, ooh,
Yeah.
what happened to you? Tell me more.
Yeah.
But it's also so validating to just know that you're not alone and have somebody hear how you're feeling and just validate you in all that feelings, not tell you you're being crazy or anything.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like therapy.
Was there anything that particularly jumped out at you, Kat, in particular? Like a certain statement or a certain feeling?
A certain statement or a certain feeling. I think just everybody's had such wildly different experiences. And I think it's just how you come out of it on the other end. And I liked, was it Riley who recommended that book?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the book. It's called A Breakup Because It's Broken, by the same guy that wrote He's Just Not That Into You. And I recommend the book to every single person that tells me they're going through a breakup. Yeah.
That sounds like some solid advice.
Yeah, I literally Googled how to feel better after a breakup because I was so sad in my breakup, and it came across that book on Amazon, and I bought it.
Very cool. We're all single in the room, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Also, I'm very excited because this is the first podcast to be dominated by women.
Ooh, fun.
Woohoo!
Dominated.
Dominated.
Good choice of words.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was going to say overcome, but I like dominated. It's a lot stronger of a word. Yeah, and the reason I wanted Kat on this particular podcast, I don't know if our listeners have figured it out, but I used to have a very big crush on Kat.
We went through a journey in college.
So you guys met in college.
We met in college, and we met at a party in college after I did a short film with some of his classmates. And we went to this party and we bonded over Nightcrawler and Hank Pym
Hank Pym, the Ant-Man.
from Marvel.
Like the
Marvel.
movie Nightcrawler?
No, the X-Men.
The X-Men character
We
Nightcrawler.
don't know about comics.
You have not seen the disappointment on Riley's face when she's like, oh, not Jake Gyllenhaal?
No, I was thinking of Riz Ahmed in that movie. He's my number 2 celebrity crush, and so
Wait, who's number 1? Michael B. Jordan?
No, number 1 is Dev Patel, always.
Oh.
Is
But
Michael B. Jordan at least in the top 5?
Michael B. Jordan's number 3. for
Yeah.
sure.
Is he in
Yeah.
your top 5, Kat?
Yeah,
He should be in everyone's, I think.
absolutely.
Anyway, what were you talking about?
What were we saying?
We were talking about how we bonded in a party about these silly superheroes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very silly superheroes.
So you were,
Cute.
Gage, you were like smitten from that situation?
Honestly, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just never encountered a person I was that in tune with as far as like movies and comics. And I still stand by the statement that I am very in tune with Kat.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a lot of people that are from my hometown, they don't get as like crazy into like the comic books or movies or just like
Right.
cutting through the shit, because Kat's pretty good at that too. I think she introduced herself as, hey, we talked a little before, we're gonna talk to each other now here at this party. And I'm like, okay, sure.
That's amazing.
Was I drunk? I don't know.
What's
might
your
have been
sign,
slightly
Kat?
inebriated.
Oh, I'm a Cancer.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh,
Okay.
interesting. Okay.
Nice. So
Yeah.
We like astrology on the
What
Breakup
happened?
podcast.
yeah, we talk about astrology a lot.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love astrology
Gage, what are
too.
you? What's your
I am a
sign?
Virgo.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
Oh.
No, I'm a Virgo rising. You probably don't know what that means, but
I like the hand motion. Probably don't know what that means.
guess most people don't. That's like if you're really into astrology, then you know where like everything is in your chart, but that's a different podcast, I guess.
Invite me to that one because I'm very into it.
Okay.
So from that day, you had a crush on Kat then?
Yeah, I think it was like a year crush at that point.
Wait, so
It was quite the crush. I don't
I
want to brag, but I had a huge crush.
I don't mean to brag. I remember because you've been involved in It's Personal. I don't know if you've talked about that at all on this podcast.
Well, you interviewed Liz and
Yeah, that's right.
Who started It's Personal, which is in LA, we do this solo performance group, which is where everyone writes their own pieces about personal stories and performs them on stage. And Gage has been in it a couple times. We just did a show last month. Right. You did an amazing piece.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
By the way, I felt very, I don't want to say isolated, but I feel like I was kind of pushing myself away from you guys during practice. I apologize if that's the case.
I didn't feel that way.
Oh, okay. Never mind then. Because that piece, just to give a little context to the piece, the topic was embarrassing, and I talked a little bit how I was embarrassed about myself and how I feel like I'm not getting anywhere. Of course, right after that piece, I got like an amazing job at somewhere else.
Yeah, of course. Like as soon as you talk about it.
As soon as you let go of it. But I remember one piece was about how you started college really young, right?
Yes, I was 17.
Oh, okay. I thought you were much younger than that. But anyways.
But that's
I thought you started college when you were like 15 in my head for some reason.
It's a child prodigy.
That's what I
That's
imagine.
That's still young, though. Like, that's...
Yeah, most people start at like 18.
I guess some people start at 17.
I was late. I was 21 when I started college.
okay.
Well, I mean, I did community college, and then I was 21 when I met
Okay,
Gage.
that's what I was getting at,
really?
essentially.
Okay.
So, how old were you when you met?
Oh, shoot. What was that? It was like, I'm bad with ages. How old are you now, Kat?
26.
26. So, oh my god, we've known each other for 5 years.
Aw, that's
Happy
so
anniversary.
nice.
So
Yay!
5 years ago, you were...
5 years ago, I was 18.
Okay, so you were pretty young.
Yeah,
I
you're
was
young.
pretty young, yeah.
You were underage drinking.
What? No. No. I deny those allegations. If you want to talk to my lawyers, they will be on the podcast. She was drinking alcohol. I was drinking like Hawaiian Punch or something. I can't remember. I barely remember college because of all the
Because you were so
Hawaiian
drunk?
Punch.
You're
Hawaiian
just
Punch.
wasted the whole time.
Yeah,
Same.
there was this story about how I drank like a whole handle, or not a whole handle, but like I was chugging a handle and then I fell into a ditch by the road.
I love that story.
Oh my god, I literally can't imagine you drinking that much alcohol. That's insane.
And nearly getting run over. Yeah.
Oh my god, I've never even had that much alcohol, and I
Yes,
enjoy a
you
drink.
100% have.
By myself? A handle?
The freaking...
Pixel party?
Yes, what was it that you're drinking?
I didn't have a handle, but I was doing fireball shots.
Fireball.
Ooh.
I definitely didn't have a
Well,
handle.
I don't think he had a whole handle.
No, of course. I would be dead.
Yeah, anyway.
So, okay, so you had a crush on her, and then Kat, you were just like, this guy is cool, or did you see him maybe romantically, but you weren't sure? Like, what was the deal there?
Yeah, what was the timeline of your guys'
I'm
relationship?
actually
and then-
interested to hear this because I've never really dived too deep in with Kat, so...
Yeah, what was the timeline? I mean, we met through all of our friends in the media production classes.
Then we started hanging out more. You know, I
One-on-one.
actually got a picture recently on Facebook that's like, this is the first time you met Kat. It was during the room screening where
I
we
saw that
hung
picture
out.
too.
Yeah, where we hung out with
Aw.
Abby. It was great. We had like
Yeah.
the spoon on our noses.
It was great. That was such a
That's
fun
cute.
night. But I don't know. I don't know when I was aware that you had a crush on me. I don't know when that came in, but I always loved hanging out with you. And I actually didn't have a crush on anybody throughout college. Which is terrible to say because I definitely had a boyfriend in college.
You didn't have a boyfriend when we met, did you?
No, I totally did. It was very short-lived.
Was this the boyfriend that listens to Achy Breaky Heart?
Yes,
night
it
with
was.
insomnia?
It was. He had insomnia, and he would want to stay over at my place all the time because he lived in the dorms. So he had insomnia, so he wouldn't sleep. So he would wake me up at 4 a.m. by playing Achy Breaky Heart on his phone.
He wanted to wake you up?
Yeah, he just, I guess he couldn't be alone in like the wee hours of the morn.
Why not just like budge you and go, a cat, oh, wake up.
I don't know which one is worse.
Yeah,
Achy
honestly,
Breaky Heart is 100% worse.
I don't know. That's a hard like, would you rather?
Right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a hard would you
It's
rather.
almost like forcing you to wake up, though.
But so is poking you and being like, hey,
So is
cat,
but
hey,
you're being
cat.
polite about it, at least. Like, could you please wake up? And you don't hear, my
That way,
achy
yeah.
breaky heart, my really breaky heart.
Regardless, he was the worst.
Anyway, it's over now.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Long
yeah.
gone.
I'm actually very unsure about this timeline because it went on for quite a bit.
Yeah, but we were really good friends. We hung out all the time.
Yeah, we hung out. It's like it wasn't like hindering us or anything.
But Kat, you knew that he had a crush and you just didn't feel the same way.
Yeah, and I don't remember when it was that I found out, but we definitely, Gage and I, we had conversations about it a couple times. So it kind of came in like waves. It was kind of a roller coaster. Like sometimes it affected our friendship and sometimes everything was really awesome.
When did it affect our friendship? I can't remember a particular instance.
Not in any prolonged ways, but I remember sometimes we would talk about it. And, you know, it's hard when, like, two people are really close, but they don't feel the same way. Like, somebody doesn't reciprocate those feelings.
Right.
And, like, that sucks. Like, it sucks for both ends.
And that's sort of the hard lesson I had to learn, like, with you,
yeah.
is, like, sometimes people just don't feel the same way. It's nothing you did. It's not your fault.
Yeah, that is a hard thing to learn.
That's sort of, like, the main through line that was, like, bugging me a lot during that whole phase. It's like, what am I doing wrong? How am I bad as a person?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was anything in particular.
No, I think you're an amazing person. Like, I love you.
Thanks.
It's just, you know,
Love
there's
you
so
too,
many
man.
people. Aw, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I
something...
can really relate to this because my best friend since high school, he and I lived, like, our parents' houses were close to each other, and so we would hang out all the time. Like, he's one of my best friends, and he had a crush on me, and it was the same thing. We would, like, talk about it occasionally because he would tell me, and I didn't feel the same way, and then, like, it was just really hard because, like, we would hang out one-on-one all the time, and we would, like, watch movies together, and we would, like, get drunk together, and we would hang out all the time. And when I would come home from college, he was the one person I would hang out with all the time, and it was hard because I think I still just wanted it to be so normal, but it wasn't normal because he felt a different way than I did. And at one point, I remember in high school, he told me he was too physically attracted to me to be my friend.
Oh, wow.
Which is so shitty because I was like, but you're my best friend, and, like, you're telling me
Yeah.
you can't be my friend. And I mean, it's just been really rough. Like, it's definitely a roller coaster where then, like, things are fine and he's dating someone or I'm dating someone, and then most recently, he now lives in Europe, and most recently he was home when I was home. We don't get to see each other very often now because he doesn't live in the States, and, like, the last time I saw him, we walked home from a bar together, and he asked me if he could kiss me, and I said no.
Oh my
Aw.
god.
The
That's
next
really
day, he
hard.
texted me and was like, I don't remember anything from last night. Did I do
A
anything
likely
weird?"
story.
I know, and I was like, no, don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, it's really hard because you're just like, I just really want to be
He's
your
just checking
friend.
if you
Why can't we
remember.
hang out? And he's like, I just really want you to date me. Why don't you like me? You know, it's like those two things are contradictory, and we've just had a really hard time, like, trying to, like, figure that out.
I feel like
Yeah.
90% of the time, it does not end great.
You have to have boundaries, I think, when
Mhm.
someone's feeling a certain way. Like, I wanted to hang out one-on-one all the time, and I think that was confusing for him, and I felt like I needed to understand that.
This isn't the boyfriend that, like, graffitied your car.
No, this
but
is
that was
somebody
one of
different.
his best friends.
Oh.
And then when I got back together with that boyfriend, then this best friend stopped talking to me because he was so mad at me
Oh.
for, like, getting back together with someone who's so terrible. And he was like, you'll regret it. And then, of course, like, 6 months later, I came back to him and I was like, you're right. I'm sorry. Like, you were right. He's a terrible person. Yeah. So it's like, it's a really interesting thing when you have a friend like that, like, both people are feeling differently. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it came to a head with Kat and I, because I remember having, like, a conversation in the living room. I don't remember the reason whatsoever, because I wanted a reason. I just wanted something to go, I'm like, this is what I can be for a better person. I don't remember a reason, even if there was a reason. But I remember very specifically Kat saying along the lines of, I think you're envisioning me as this person who I'm not.
yes,
I
that's the
remember.
thing. You, like, build someone up in your head.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen so many relationships, not even just romantic relationships, but even friendships, where you just kind of idealize a person and they can't be that person for you because that's not who they are.
Yeah, it's impossible. We talk about that a lot on the breakup. The experience that Gage and Kat had is very similar to, like, you know, what happened to Riley, or it's probably happened to me. It's like, sometimes people just aren't meant to be together, and that's okay. It's nothing personal. It's just like...
Yeah, it's hard to understand. at the
Yeah, it's
time.
hard to wrap
Yeah,
your head
absolutely. My point is, like, if you're feeling that, like, that is a common feeling and
Yeah.
you're not alone.
How did you feel when she said that, Gage? Were you just like, you're wrong?
around. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
You're like, no.
And I honestly, I still feel that way. Not that, like, I still have a crush on her. I'm just saying, like, I feel like Kat is this amazing person, and she doesn't 100% realize it, for
Aw.
sure. Yeah. you go, girl.
Thanks.
And
I like me.
good.
Yeah.
And I was lashing out like totally unrelated things, like, oh my god, well sometimes I feel bad and you aren't there, which honestly that's like 10% of the time we ever hang out and talk that happens. I was trying to, I don't know, for lack of a better word, I feel like I was almost trying to guilt her in a way
Yeah.
into liking me. But,
Yeah, I think that can happen.
Yeah.
and yeah, there was tears involved, but
Yeah.
we did come out better people, I think.
I think so. I think we've definitely had a few arguments. We've definitely had some rough patches, but I think we learned a lot about each other. And like, I think in that way, we've learned a lot about like what the other person feels. Like, I've definitely learned to like consider your feelings more throughout the whole situation. And I'm sure you've gotten a different perspective on my feelings.
100%.
And you become better friends in the end, going through kind of a roller coaster like that.
And I'm proud of you for sticking with me, because
Yeah.
I am not the easiest person to stick with.
I love that because both of you can see each other as such great people. Like, sometimes you need another person to really see you in their eyes, and you can really see how valued you are. Like, you both value each other so much and have had such a long friendship that it really shows. And I think that's cool because you guys have been able to like work through those issues and stuff. And yeah, it's really cool.
And I think that there is such a thing as like a non-romantic soulmate.
Oh, totally.
I mean, there's a lot of pressure for people to couple up and like be a couple or like create a family or like create a unit, you know, biologically and socially. But I think it's hard to navigate feelings of like, this person is like my soulmate and I like really love them, but like we're just not meant to be together romantically, because soulmate and romance are like so intrinsically meshed together in conversations about like finding the one and all of that. But I feel like I've met people that I have known like in a past life or something, and I'm just like, understand you and I love you, but that was a different lifetime.
You know what I'm thinking about this whole time? Our relationship was like Ted and Robin in How I Met Your Mother. Oh, you haven't seen it?
No.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Have you seen it, Kat?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that show. The last episode was terrible.
But yeah, throughout the series, like at one point he dates Robin, and then Robin is dating his friend, and Ted's like, oh, I still got feelings for her. And he was like almost tried to sabotage their wedding. And as the viewer, you're yelling at him like, what are you doing? Like that whole time, I know you're in love, but she's with someone else and you gotta let her go. I know you guys work great on like a friendship level, but this isn't working out. Why are you doing this? That's just what I was thinking the whole time. Like, if I was watching my life in a movie, I'd be like, what are you doing, Gage?
Yeah.
Like, do the
Don't
other thing.
don't ruin the friendship because you have a crush on someone that doesn't feel the same way. Like, you want to yell at someone sometimes about that. But then when you're doing it yourself, it's hard to really like turn it off because you're like, yeah, but maybe. But in reality, when someone tells you they don't like you like that, you have to accept it and you have to figure out how you want to continue having that person in your life, whether you do or you don't, or you want to stay friends, or whatever. Like, you have to kind of accept what people tell you.
And that's what makes me so mad when people use the friend zone excuse. It's like, I've told so many people that I really, cherish our friendship, and like I really value the relationship we have as friends. And I don't want people to take that the wrong way. I don't want people to feel that my friendship is like a shitty consolation prize.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Just being like, you're too physically attracted to me to be my friend. You're like, what the fuck? Like, you really can't be my friend because you're physically attracted to me? Like, that to me felt so shitty. Like, you don't value me as a friend enough to like try to be my friend, even if you are attracted to me. Like, that sucks, you know?
Like, that our friendship means so little to you.
Right.
Like, that's how it feels.
And they're probably a shitty friend anyways. That's actually another thing I wanted to talk about. You guys talk about how these relationships are growing and looking in from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
You guys run a podcast just all about love. So your perception of love and other people's relationships, you've seen probably more than the average person at this point. So how has your concept of love and perception changed since you started the podcast?
I actually have had something cool that's happened to me on the podcast is that I have interviewed, so my ex-boyfriend from college was a really traumatic breakup. I've interviewed his best friend, who's one of my close friends. We've interviewed him on the podcast, and I got to kind of ask him some questions about that. I've also interviewed someone I briefly dated, and also got to interview my mom.
Was that the Amir podcast?
Yeah,
one?
Amir, yeah.
I love that podcast because he's just like,
Also,
just
great
go for it."
voice for
Yeah.
podcasts. Yeah, he's also
Sexy
a
ass
rapper,
voice.
so yeah.
Bit
And-
disappointing though.
The voice lives up to the face
It
in
really
that scenario.
Yeah, so it's been actually really interesting for me to kind of talk to other people in a setting where they kind of, I mean, we could always edit it out, but I ask the questions they kind of have to answer because they're mic'd up about like certain things that have happened with relationships and breakups and how they feel about a certain person I've dated or how they feel that the situation was in their perspective. And it's really changed my perspective a lot of how I have viewed things in my mind for so long. And then being like, oh wow, maybe this wasn't exactly how I thought it was. I've kind of like put this all in my own mind, like on this pedestal, or, you know, made it out to be something maybe it wasn't. And it's been really interesting to talk to people I know about that. And it's really changed the way that I think about a lot of stuff. It's just really cool to get this other view of how people see the world and how they've been able to deal with similar or different types of circumstances surrounding breakups. It's really helped me a lot deal with how I view relationships and how I view breakups, and it's been really interesting to listen to myself back. And I have not listened to that episode, the UGG episode, where I talk about the like recent breakup. I can't listen to that one
Oh
because
my God.
my episode, the second episode of the podcast, my therapist and I spent 2 months going over that episode and diving deep into my relationships, so we listened together.
That's so great though.
Yeah,
because
it
you
was
have,
great.
like, a
It helped
recorded-
me a lot, but it's really crazy to listen to yourself back and be like, wow, like this is how I viewed these relationships, and then dive into like why I feel that way.
Yeah. I think something else that Riley and I both have taken away from the podcast is like the ability to talk about the relationships that we've been in, like romantically or otherwise, like with less emotion. Like we can be really,
objective.
yes, thank you, objective about the relationships that we've been in. And also, like, I've learned a lot about, like, just from talking to other people, like, hearing other people say, you know, one thing or another about how they handle their relationship or dating, and then recognizing, like, a similar behavior in myself and being like, oh, fuck. Like,
Who
I
was
should
it that
probably...
we interviewed that you were like, I feel like myself is talking?
I don't know. It happens. I can't remember who it was
but yeah,
specifically,
you were like,
but...
whoa, this feels like you're speaking to me.
Yeah. But
About
that's
what
happened
I
a
do,
few
yeah.
times. Even we recorded with somebody today who was talking about how one of her resolutions was to, like, allow, like, romance to come into her life in 2018. And I was like, damn, I did that in 2017, and, like, it didn't really go that well. It was just, like, something that I, like,
Oh shit! I should ask that girl out.
put into the universe, and then, I don't know, didn't really work on it. It's, like, something you have to work on.
Yeah, you really realized a lot about yourself talking to other people
Yeah.
about those. And just even going about my day and people being like, what do you do? Or whatever, and saying like, oh yeah, I have a podcast about breakups. People immediately start going into their deep
Yep.
shit. And then you really get to learn about people, and people like confide in you because they're like, oh, for
You
some
feel
reason,
safe.
Yeah, they think you're like an expert or something. And
Yeah.
I mean, people email us. We ask people to email us. thebreakuppodcast@gmail.com if anyone wants to talk to us about their breakups.
I'm
And
sorry. What was that email again?
thebreakuppodcast@gmail.com.
thebreakuppodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, so
That's it.
and I mean, especially when I went through my breakup in August, when people would email me, it was so cathartic just to be like, I totally get what you're feeling. And people will be like, I related to you here, and you get to talk to people
Yeah.
and really feel not alone.
Yeah.
We're all going through this together, and that's been really helpful.
Something else that's just been really helpful for me about the podcast, which we talked about in an episode we posted recently called Teach Them a Lesson They Won't Understand. People will occasionally like slide into the breakup DMs on Instagram and be like, Eleanor, I have a fat crush on you.
Well, because in the first episode, Eleanor was like, you can slide into my DMs, because that's like, she loves sliding into DMs. So people do it because she said so.
Yeah, I
And
guess-
so people legitimately like look her up, see how beautiful she is, and I like slide in and be like, hey, what's up?
Yeah, so anyway, I recently was like, Riley and I had like a real come to Jesus moment where it was like, why are you like being so dismissive about these people who are like giving you positive attention? And I was like, oh wow, yeah, that's something I need to work on. That's probably been like one of the biggest things that I've learned from the breakup, because I feel like that will really shift my dating life moving forward.
Yeah, it really gives us a lot of stuff to talk about in therapy. Just the podcast.
Yeah.
I actually have a similar, I shouldn't say condition, like, I guess like almost like a tick where if someone compliments me, I'm like, oh, they have like some sort of ulterior motive.
You in particular, Gage, are very quick to like put yourself down if someone says something like positive about you. Like, I feel like you,
For sure. Even
it's
this
very
last show.
it's very uncomfortable for you to really like, I'm doing a good job, or like, I did this thing and I'm proud of myself. Like, I think it's hard for all of us, but
Yeah.
I think that especially every single person after our last It's Personal show was like, Gage's piece was so awesome, like, oh my god, and it really was, and people were giving you such positive feedback, and I feel like that sometimes is hard for you.
It was because, I don't know, when I feel like I'm doing that piece, it's almost like my therapy. I'm just talking to myself in that case.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you're talking to an audience of people, which is so
Yeah.
scary.
It must be scary to be that vulnerable with something so personal and have all of that direct feedback
Yep.
about your personal experiences.
Also, Kat, you would appreciate this. I told Riley this. I feel like my first piece was Star Wars, the movie, and this one was The Empire Strikes Back. So I'm like, I gotta go darker in this piece.
Yeah,
I gotta have a little romance,
I
a little
think that's
flair.
how everyone, when we do the show, we talk about personal stuff, and as soon as people do one piece, they're like, oh, I can go more. And
I
at
ripped
this
the
point,
Band-Aid
I
off
have
him.
talked about every single thing on stage. It's almost like, what will I not talk about on stage? That's like the problem I've had, because I've done now like 8 shows.
Would
So
you be
yeah, it gets
comfortable
addictive.
talking like on the podcast about the topic of your last piece?
I mean, we do talk about that kind of stuff, but maybe not to the extent of which you did it in the
Yeah.
on stage and it's personal.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I want to exactly say, but I did talk about, well, I'll say I did talk about like sex related stuff in my piece and really
Right.
got into like some really embarrassing like sex stories, which was very interesting to talk to people after the show, because I was like, you just heard every single embarrassing, very personal thing about me, and now I'm like, hi, nice to meet you. Like, it was very weird.
But what's cool about It's Personal and the Breakup podcast, and like podcasts in general, and just like opening up conversation, is that you're doing just that, right? Like, you're breaking down barriers and like you're opening up conversations about things that might be kind of taboo.
Yes.
That's my favorite thing, when you have a listener or a friend going like, hey, I listened to your podcast recently, and you said this particular thing. I don't know if you saw this video. I did a brief video essay about movie trailers. Kat, did you watch this?
I don't think I did.
It's like a YouTube video?
Yeah, it's like a YouTube video.
Oh, okay. Oh, I
Well,
didn't
I said, because ABC is owned by Disney,
Yeah.
they show all the Marvel trailers on Jimmy Kimmel. And I
Oh.
think I said in my piece, I don't want to stare at Jimmy Kimmel's dead eyes in order to get a trailer for Spider-Man. And I had a friend text me like, dude, I totally relate to that Jimmy Kimmel.
Nobody's ever validated that feeling of mine before.
And I'm like, yes, I know, thank you. He needs to have a little more flair in his eyes.
Yeah, it's awesome when people relate to what
Yeah.
you're talking about. You just feel great because you're like, wow, I'm talking about something so personal, so it feels so personal to you. But then when someone's like, I feel the same way, you're like, wow, I guess what I'm feeling isn't that weird.
Yeah.
Not to keep going back to It's Personal, but doing those shows, you've said that piece so many times because you're in a very safe setting, which I love about the show.
Right.
When you practice, that sometimes the emotion like is taken away. So by the time you actually perform your piece, you're just like, this is what I practiced for. But people are hearing it for the first time, and they're like, I had this great impact, and you're like, well, I don't know.
That's why it's great,
just doing
because
it for
you're
the show.
able to do it as a performance, and you're able to take the emotion away from it and really make it a performance piece, but then it still evokes emotion in other people
Right.
because of the content that you're talking about. So you're able to remove yourself enough to talk about it, but yet people really can feel it for the first time by seeing it. So
And
it's
you're
just-
taking the time to process it and
Yeah.
rehearsing and all
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah, so if you're in the LA area,
You're in the LA
it's
area.
personalonstage.com.
So let's continue our conversation about love and relationships with something that I think everybody should work on, which is emotional maturity.
Yes.
And when I say emotional maturity, we should just go around and ask what goes on in everybody's minds. Riley, you're farthest away. Why don't you start?
Technically, Kat's farthest away. She's in Florida.
Oh,
that is
Kat,
true.
she threw the ball to you. Go ahead.
Emotional maturity.
Emotional maturity.
That's such a vague thing. Like, what do you mean specifically by that, Gage?
Oh, I'm just saying what comes to your mind when I say that.
Oh, okay. Kat.
Oh, I totally get it. Kat,
Yeah.
you go for it.
So emotional maturity, I think a lot of emotional maturity is understanding where the other person is coming from. If if you're in a situation where you're not seeing eye to eye with somebody, and I think this touches on what we were talking about earlier, when people don't reciprocate the same feelings, it's not anything personal against you when somebody doesn't feel the same way that you feel, because they obviously care about you in other ways. I think it's very emotionally mature to understand why that person feels the way they feel, and that they're not doing it to be cruel to you, unless of course they are, but
Right.
it's important to understand the difference between when somebody's like being an asshole and ghosting you and things like that, or when they just really truly care about you as a friend or as a person, but they just can't be what you want them to be, and they know that to make you happy they're not going to be that.
Right. You need like that level of understanding, which in my mind, emotional maturity is like going through that shit in order to really realize like where other people are coming from and how you feel and how not to make the same mistakes.
Yeah, you have to go through it in order to learn all that.
Yeah.
When you say it, something that comes to my mind is actually a quote that I love from Louis C.K., which, like, yikes. But I love this quote that when someone tells you how you made them feel, you don't get to tell them that they're wrong. So if someone says, like, you hurt me, you don't get to say, no, I didn't. Like, let me tell you why I didn't. No, they told you how you made them feel. You do not get to say you're wrong. And I think that's really emotional maturity, is when like really understanding that and taking responsibility for your actions and understanding that people's emotions are valid and you do not get to question those even if you think you didn't do anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah.
Here, I can throw back another quote. You can use this instead of Louis C.K. Ben Folds 5 did a song called House. It's a very simple quote. It's, I'm not sorry for what I'm feeling.
Yes, I love that.
It's like, I don't regret having a crush on Kat. She's an amazing person. Why wouldn't you have a crush on her? But it's not wrong that happened. It's just something that happened sort of naturally.
Yeah.
So emotional maturity to me is just, once again, understanding emotions and validating that.
Yeah. I think it's like being able to have empathy. It's like also being able to be vulnerable with yourself and like understand the emotions that you're feeling and be able to communicate those. I think the hard time that Riley and I have with like dating in LA is that we feel like a lot of men have a very hard time communicating their emotions.
Well, yeah, and men in particular are told to shut them off.
Yeah, I know
Growing up,
exactly
yeah.
where it comes from, but it's like we need to work on breaking that cycle.
Exactly.
But I think like emotional maturity is like knowing your feelings and like recognizing them and being okay with them.
Yeah. Be okay with your feelings. It's a good thought.
Yeah.
I love
like
that
that.
too. Yeah, I think maybe it's pretty common for people to not really understand why they're feeling a certain way. People always say like you gotta help yourself before you can help others.
Put on the oxygen mask on yourself first before
Right.
helping others. Yeah, like you have to work on yourself before you can be in a relationship or like affect someone else.
Exactly. It's oh shoot, give me a second. Whatever. If it wasn't so important, I wouldn't have forgotten it. Oh. Eleanor, you said you weren't going to be mean.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't think that was mean.
Yeah. She didn't even realize.
Well, do you want to go around and define mean too? Because
Mean is when you are maliciously trying to get a person to be sad, which I don't think you were trying to do.
okay, good.
No, I don't think that's ever her
I definitely
intention.
wasn't.
Yeah.
That's never my intention. Yeah, that's right.
No, so in a way, not a lot of people are mean.
Yeah. Well, and I think also, like, speaking to that and emotional maturity is that, like, really, I think that would help a lot in not only, like, romantic relationships or friendships, but also in the way that a lot of people deal with, like, politics and other views, is that to really try to see where another person is coming from on an opposite viewpoint as you. Like, how they grew up, what their experiences are, and why they are feeling the way that they're feeling. Like, for me personally, like trying to understand like, oh, I'm so upset about how this person treated me, and then taking a step back and realizing like where they're coming from and maybe what their experience is and why they are hurting so much that they maybe hurt me has really helped me understand a lot of breakups and a lot of ways that people treat me, and me to really let go of any like pain, because it's not really about me.
Yeah.
If someone treats me poorly, it's not necessarily about me. And realizing that like that doesn't take away from my self-worth.
Yeah, it is hard to separate that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I go to group therapy, and I know Riley has gone to group therapy too, but that's something that I've learned in group therapy, like understanding other people's viewpoints and like really have effective conversations with those people so that they can understand where you're coming from and you can understand where they're coming from too, and understand how there could be like similarities or differences between your experiences.
Okay that people don't see eye to eye.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was actually going to mention Inside Out, speaking of like emotional maturity.
And her name's Riley.
Her name's Riley too.
I love that movie. I cried at that movie.
It's a great movie. Well, you should cry because that's the message of the movie. It's okay to be sad.
It's okay to have feelings.
It's
you have
okay
to feel all
feelings.
your feelings. You can't suppress them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that movie is very emotionally mature.
Oh,
yes.
100%.
Yeah,
That's not really even a kid's movie if you think about it. It's more of a
movie.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a regular old movie.
So you mentioned group therapy, and you mentioned therapy a lot on your
if
podcast.
you want like anything to take away from the Breakup podcast, it's that we fucking love therapy.
And the podcast is pretty therapeutic in its own way too, I would say.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about mental health. What's your sort of position on that? How you grew up thinking about mental health?
Sure,
if
that's
you did.
interesting. Yeah.
And where do you land on it now?
I'll go first.
Yes,
so growing up, my mother was in therapy my whole life, and I always thought it was so strange. My father is very like anti-therapy, and my mother is very like pro-therapy. So I always was like, I don't get it. Like, why do you need to pay somebody to hear what you're saying? Like, I was just, you know, an asshole. And so growing up, I always had like, I guess, a bit of a conflicted view of therapy because my mom was very pro and my father was very like, it's so unnecessary.
And your parents aren't together also.
Yeah. Yeah, my parents are still together.
Same household.
So I dated somebody for 8 years, and like during that time, we were broken up for a year, but still talking regularly. It was kind of like a don't ask, don't tell situation. Like, I won't ask you what you're doing, and if I ask, don't tell me what you're doing. But I found out that he had been seeing somebody else, and so it was like during finals when I was in college, and I was having a very hard time like focusing on anything because I was like so distracted by this news about my ex-boyfriend. And so I called my mom and was like, I don't know what to do. And my mom was like, why don't you just go see a therapist? Like, I'll figure everything out and just email you. Like, all you have to do is just like show up, essentially. So then I started seeing a therapist at my college, and that's kind of how I got into therapy. Like, I ended up getting back together with that ex-boyfriend, and we dated for like another 4 years. And then when I was going through my breakup again, like thinking about breaking up with him, I was like, I need to start seeing a therapist again because that will help me process everything. Because luckily I'd had the experience of like going to a therapist. That was good in college.
I went to a college therapist as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
if you're in
that's
college, it's
very,
a
very
great,
helpful.
great resources that a lot of colleges offer that. So definitely you can look into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get like 10 free sessions. I think that was my
Yeah,
deal.
that was mine too. 10 free
awesome.
sessions a
So
semester.
awesome, yeah, and definitely you should take advantage of that if you are in college because therapy is expensive out of
Yeah.
that. So
And it's not always the easiest to get a hold of. I also took advantage of that in college, and it's such a good resource to have that's right in front of you for free. So
totally,
definitely.
yeah.
It's like lynda.com, which is today's sponsor, lynda.com. If you're looking for something, I'm sorry, I didn't undercut this therapy thing with a fake advertisement.
You had me
Oh
fooled.
my god.
Yeah, like Eleanor said, sort of this taboo thing, like,
A lot of people
oh,
do, I
that
think.
person goes to therapy. There
Yeah,
must be
something's
something
wrong with
wrong
them.
with
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
And even when I started going to therapy the second time around, like I was more comfortable with seeing a therapist and like being in individual therapy, but I was really going through something. So I still
It
felt
felt
weird
okay.
talking about it though.
Mhm.
Like, cause like not everyone goes to therapy, and sometimes like, I mean, Riley and I are like, that person needs a therapist. That we really
All we
believe
do is talk
everyone.
about therapy.
And we really
You
believe
should
that
see
like
them people watching. They go, therapist.
Yeah.
Therapist.
I mean, basically, like, we think everybody should have a therapist.
We've turned a lot of people onto.
Yeah.
There's a sliding scale therapy
That's
place in
excellent.
LA that we've turned a lot of people onto, which is great.
Yeah, even the second time I was going, when I started going to the place that I go to group therapy now, I was going through something very hard, so I did feel very weird kind of talking about, like, oh, me and my therapist talked about this, and, like, I didn't want to seem, like, weak for going through a breakup, so I don't know. There is a lot of taboo with therapy, but we're lucky we live in a place like LA where people are more open to therapy and like spending your time and money and resources on something like that. So we hope that our listeners that don't live in LA or live in places where it's not as socially acceptable can hear our opinion and realize like, yeah, it's totally fine to do that.
Yeah, mental health is so important, and it sucks that it's so stigmatized when people choose to seek therapy. I think like it's such a hard choice to make, to finally go see a therapist or get any sort of help. But everybody goes through some sort of struggle. Like, nobody can carry the weight of the world by themselves. So it should be so much more normalized.
Yeah.
It's okay if you can't.
I was talking with somebody recently about like a friend that we're trying to get to go to therapy, and like he had finally like gotten the courage to call the therapist and like set up the appointment. And then, you know, like that moment where you're like, okay, I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to call them. Like I definitely had this when I was going through my breakup where I was like, okay, it's time. Like, press the green button, call the therapist. Like, you're ready to talk about what you're feeling, because they usually do like a little bit of an intake on the phone with you to like gauge where you're at. So I'm like, okay, I'm ready for it. And then, you know, like the anticipation and anxiety of calling and then getting a voicemail. And like the person that I was talking to was just like, so funny that you like build up the courage to do it and then you do it and you just get voicemail and you're like, what the fuck? Like it didn't even happen.
It's like going to the gym. The hardest part about going to the gym is just getting out of the house.
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely.
Oh yeah. Except therapy is so much easier to like get out of the house to go to for me.
I look forward to therapy. Or
Yeah.
I don't see a therapist. I should see a therapist now.
We can definitely give you some resources.
Yeah, we can use resources.
For sure, I'd be interested in that.
I'd like to start individual therapy again. So I went to a therapist for a long time when I was like going through my breakup and then like being single. And then because at the place where we go to, it's like mostly people who have graduated who are trying to get their hours to be certified or whatever. And so he had essentially like graduated from the center and was like, you can see me in private practice, but it's very expensive. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to like try to live life like by myself for a little while. But now being in group again, I realize like it is really helpful. It's just like kind of a part of like your overall health and wellness as opposed to like, oh, I only do it when I need it.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely been like a process of my family in general like struggles from some mental health problems, and like I do as well. And I think it's been a process of me really coming to terms with that. I actually did a piece for It's Personal about it because I think it's something I've tried to hide like most of my life, that I have like anxiety issues and depression, and now I'm on antidepressants and I go to a therapist, and for a while I was going to my individual therapist and to group therapy, and it still feels kind of shameful to talk about. Like I don't love saying it, which sucks, like that I don't always feel comfortable being like, oh yeah, like I have my therapist appointment. Sometimes I'll just be like, oh yeah, I have an appointment today or whatever. And I try to get better about that, or try to get better about talking about the fact that I'm on antidepressants, because you kind of see someone's eyes be like, oh, what's wrong with you? As soon as you say that.
I'm on antidepressants too. I'm like getting excited about the antidepressants.
What are you on?
I am on...
I'll tell you mine if you tell me yours.
Shoot, I can't remember the name.
Mine's Cymbalta.
I actually got to get this refilled. I am on Abilify.
Okay.
And I think it's just Prozac, but there's like a fancier name for it.
Yeah.
I'm on
Yeah, you
that.
feel like people think you're crazy, and I'm like, you don't understand. Like, my depression was manifesting itself into me being very tired, and since going on this, it's truly changed my life. I can actually stay awake all day. I can actually work at my job. I can actually get other stuff done, and I couldn't before. And so to be like, I want to shout it from the rooftops, like, everything's good now. And so it sucks that people are like, oh, but there's something wrong with you. And you're like, no, it's like making me function like you do. Like, my brain doesn't work the same way, and like it needs help, and that's okay. Yeah. And it's making me able to function like normally, and that's awesome. Like, that's so fucking awesome that I'm able to get that help that I need. And I want to be able to like tell people, like, if you feel like something's off, it might not feel like depression. Like, mine didn't necessarily feel like depression, has at certain points, but it felt just like over tired, and then it totally changed my life, and I feel great.
Yeah.
So I think it's like something to just be like, you can feel 100%, and it's okay if your brain doesn't work the same way as everyone else's.
Yeah, that's also very, I don't know if it helps anyone, but it helped me to realize that, hey, this is actually something that is weighing your life down, and it's curable. It's not something wrong with you as a person. It's
Yeah,
just
it's like
this
the way you're
biological
born.
thing.
Yeah,
Right.
It has nothing to do with who you are.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a part of you. It's just like if you had a other chronic illness or another thing that was like a physical thing. Like, it's
like
just
if you
is
get your
part
hand
of you.
chopped off and you have a hook. It's not your fault that you got a hook hand.
Yeah.
Or if you need to
Okay.
wear glasses, if you have poor vision.
Yes.
Precisely.
Yes.
That's probably a better
That's a better
example.
analogy.
Yeah.
If you have one hand, you're a freak. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Don't be mean, Gage.
You're right. I was trying to hurt those one-handed people.
Yeah, I have a prescription to Xanax. So if I'm ever like really, really anxious, I'll take it. But my mom is always like, it's okay. Because I'll be like texting her, I'm freaking out. And she's like, you have help. Like, you have access to Xanax. If you need to take it, it's okay to have help. Like, it's okay to take the help. It exists for a reason.
And I think just like being kind to yourself about this type of stuff is really what's helpful. Like, when I do get like intense anxiety out of nowhere, it like makes me kind of mad. Like, why am I all of a sudden anxious about literally nothing? Like, it's really hard to be like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you feeling this way? Or like, why am I feeling like down or something? Like, it kind of brings me back to a time in my life where I did feel really depressed, and like, okay, just like be nice to yourself. Like, just allow yourself to feel this. It's okay. You're not weird. Like, it's totally okay. Like, this will pass. Like, you know, do something to make yourself feel okay right now. And just, if you don't feel like you can go out and talk to people, like, just give yourself a break. Like, just being nice to yourself, I think, makes a huge difference. And especially when you're like going through something, like when you're going through a breakup, knowing that you're gonna feel shitty, it's okay. Like, just give yourself some time to feel those feelings, and like, you will feel okay at some point. And if you don't, there is help. Like, there is things that will make you feel better, and you can access those things.
Yeah.
My piece actually hit a lot on that. Just like allowing yourself to take a step back and focusing on yourself, which I am horrible at, by the way. And
Well, it's hard to do that.
it's very hard, especially when you're in LA and you have these people, like I said in my piece, people who you love to the moon and back, doing all these great things, and you're so happy for them. But at the same time, you ask yourself, what am I doing? That's a dangerous path to go down.
Comparing yourself, that's really dangerous.
That sounds very Virgo,
Yeah.
I have to say.
Well, guys, it was just the month I was born.
It's so much more than that.
Yeah.
All right.
Plans for life.
Virgos are perfectionists.
Oh, that sounds very much like me.
Yeah. There we go.
Kat, do you kind of struggle with sort of similar things that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, just in terms of mental health, or what you were just talking about a second ago.
Mental health, just overall.
Yeah, I struggle with anxiety, and I take something for it. I don't like to take it all the time, but it's nice to know that I have it when I need it.
Right, same.
That's good.
You know, it's not going to be for everybody, and I think a lot of people are like, oh, just stigmatizing medication, and like, you're going to be hooked on it forever. And it's like, yeah, well, I'm going to wear my glasses forever too. Like, why is one worse than the other?
I need to see, okay?
Exactly, yeah, and there's nothing wrong with, you know, getting help when you can't, like, produce it on your own. Like, I think there's a good balance of getting medicine and getting the help that way, and then also, like you were saying, being kinder to yourself and talking to yourself and letting yourself feel those feelings. I think those two things go hand in hand when you're going through stuff. And everybody goes through it. It's just, like, a shame that it's not more normalized to seek that help when you need it. Because it's available for people.
My mom actually said recently that mental health is just as important, if not more important, than physical health.
Yeah, because it's your brain. Like, think about
Yeah,
that. Like, you know,
the most important organ in your body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your body's, like, they do get older with time. And yes, of course, physical health is important to make sure that, like, you're healthy. But, like, your brain, you really have to make sure it's healthy your whole life also.
This might be going a little too deep, but my grandfather recently just passed away. And I think a lot of the sort of, I don't want to say problems, but anxiety and depression, that comes from that side of the family. It's interesting kind of going through this transition where it's almost like you got to let that piece of your past go and develop into more of you, and not holding on to what that person was. And you got to know that they're at peace through one way or another. Sorry, I'm rambling a little bit, but I did want to go on the topic of letting people go in your life. Not just relationship-wise, for like ex-boyfriends, or like letting people who are honestly dragging you down, or people that make you feel worse about yourself. Have you ever had to let anyone go before, like, almost intentionally?
Yeah, I definitely
I
have.
feel like you can speak to this. Yeah.
I don't know if it's like I hold the people in my life to like a really high standard or not. But
Well, also, I will say that Eleanor is like probably the best friend you will ever have, our other friend. And I say that all the time. Like, you're such a good friend that, like, you should hold people to such a high standard because, like, Eleanor is like ride or die. Like, she will have your back. Like, she really takes her friendships seriously. So I think that probably is like what that is.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah.
I think part of the reason why I take my friendship so seriously too is because I was like in such a committed relationship, and then when I didn't have that relationship, I really needed my friends. Like, my value of friendship, I've always had that, but it went to a new level when I became single because it was like I needed these people in my life to support me, and I wanted to be there to support them too. So yeah, I've definitely had times with friends where I felt like they weren't willing to make the commitment to me that I was willing to make to them, or that I was making with them. I don't really vibe with that kind of vibe. Like, I don't know, I've texted friends before and been like, this isn't working for me, and if you're not going to be on the same page as me, like, I totally am down to talk about this in person, but this is how I'm feeling. You know, some people will respond like, oh yeah, let's have a conversation about this. Like, I feel like if there's ever a problem in a friendship that I have, like with Riley or with our other friends, like, I would want them to communicate that with me and like have an open discussion about it. But then there have been other times where people have responded like, oh, I'm really busy right now, and I'm like, okay, great, I don't need you in my life now, thank you, goodbye.
Guess what? I'm too busy for you.
But it's not even like I'm too busy for you. It's just like, by saying that, I can tell that you aren't committed to me in the way that I'm committed to you, and I'm not going to waste my time and energy on a relationship that is not fulfilling.
Exactly, like, they don't care to put in the time.
Right.
If they're not prioritizing it.
Right. I feel the same way about dating. If you're not willing to put in the work, then you're not into it. That's it. Like, if somebody wants to be with you, friendship or otherwise, they will make the effort to make it happen.
That's interesting how confrontational you are about people, because I am horrible.
That's a really great word for who Eleanor is.
I am just horrible at confronting people. And people are like, you got a problem with me? I'll be like, yeah.
It's hard confronting people. Like, I personally try to avoid it. I'm like, I don't want to confront people, so I'm going to have no problems with anybody in my life. I'm going to avoid problems as much as I can, just so I don't have to confront any problems. But that's not how life works, so of course we have to confront our shit sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need those difficult conversations.
Yeah. I would much rather have a difficult conversation than not have it at all.
Oh, absolutely.
And like be wondering about what would have happened, or like living in discomfort in a relationship. It doesn't feel good to do that.
No, you're just prolonging like a toxic situation.
Yeah. And I think there have definitely been times with friends where like I have friends that are really valuable to me, but I've taken time away from them. I think it's also important to manage your expectations of your friends and like realize like what role your friends can play in your life. Some friends I have are available to me in certain ways, and other friends are available to me in other ways. So like, I don't want to put an expectation on those friends that I have to do something that they're just like not really capable of doing.
Once again, that goes back to me and Kat, because I expected so much from Kat, and she's like, I'm just here.
And I think that goes back to our conversation about emotional maturity, like knowing that your friendships are going to evolve over time, and that, you know, the person that somebody is today maybe isn't who they were 5 or 10 years ago, and that they can give you what they're able to, and we have to like accept everyone for who they are. And I don't know, I mean, like, I don't want to make it sound like, oh, like, accept everybody, you know, because there's going to be people who are like are toxic to you, and like you have to know when to let them go.
Yeah, and you have to like the oxygen mask, like you have to put your oxygen mask on first. So if someone is bringing you down, like, you are the most important person in your life, and you have to remember that, because you cannot be a good person for other people if you're not loving yourself and like being there for yourself the most. And sometimes other people, like, the way that they're acting toward you is because they are unhappy with themselves, or they have issues with themselves, and that's what they need to work on. But you do not need to be in a toxic relationship, be in a toxic friendship, or even be talking to someone in your family who is toxic because you feel bad or you feel like you need to, because you need to care about yourself the most. And that, I think, is like what you really need to prioritize. Not like in like a dick way, like you don't care about anyone else, but like you really need to make sure that you are taking care of your own mental health and your own like just your own emotions, being sure that that's important.
I completely agree.
I think, like, in the theme of this podcast, like, as a 20-something, relationships evolve a lot, I think, during this decade. Because you get out of college and, like, you're figuring out what it's like to be an adult, so your relationships with your friends are shifting then. And then, like, towards the end of your 20s, like, I know people who are getting engaged now and, like, getting married, and I think when that starts to happen for, like, Riley or me or any of our friends, like, our relationships are just bound to shift because priorities will shift too. I won't be able to be an amazing friend, and well, I mean, I think I will be because that's a priority for me, but will be a different friend when I have a family than I am now.
Yeah.
Because I'm, like, completely available to my friends, but, like, I don't have children.
Which is important because we're, like, this time in our lives, we're really valuing friendships, and those friendships will take us through, like, the rest of our lives because we've been able to nourish them at this time in our lives. And then later on, when we're, like, you know, have other priorities, we still have this base of this, like, really close friendship that we've developed because we've taken time to make sure that it's important to us.
That's also what I like about growing up more, and emotional maturity, by the way. You understand a lot more where the other person is coming from.
Yes.
So if you haven't seen a person in like 6 months,
Yes.
you can just call them up and they're like, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. Let's just hang out. And you pick up right where you left out.
Right.
And both of you guys understand totally.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. And especially with the longer you've been friends with somebody, everybody's lives are going to be in different places. Like, nobody's going to go the same place, like, as you're growing up. Like, one of my best friends today, I hadn't spoken to him for several years after high school. And then we both just happened to move back to our same hometown, and we hang out like we had never stopped being friends.
Yeah, I love that too.
Yeah. And a lot of my best friends, I mean, like, I have a friend who lived in the Caribbean for a while. I have a friend who lived in South Carolina for a while. We see each other maybe twice a year, but it's always like we never left.
Ah, that's great. It's a good note to sort of wrap this up on.
I feel like I had a final question that I've been thinking about, and I wanted to see what you guys thought about it too.
Sure.
Love this.
So letting go is really hard. It's really hard to do, especially when you have so much history with someone, and just ripping off the band-aid is not the easiest thing to do. But what advice would you give to somebody if they were in a situation that they needed to either break up with somebody or just get over somebody? Like, what's the best way to get over someone?
Well, Eleanor was in a relationship for 8 years, so you can probably speak to that pretty well about, like, really having a life with someone and then having to move on. What advice do you have?
I mean, obviously therapy helped me a lot. Like, therapy really helped me normalize my feelings and understand that my feelings were, like, legitimate and also, like, common, and that it helped me process, like, what I was going through and, like, look at things objectively as opposed to, like, being so emotional about something. So I always recommend getting a therapist. Like Riley and I have talked about, we love therapy. But I also think it's important to find things that you like. You know, like, I dated somebody for 8 years and I really sacrificed who I was to be in a relationship. So what was so important to me was, like, if I'm going to be single, like, I'm really going to be single. So I, like, moved into an apartment by myself. I didn't want to have any roommates. I didn't, like, want to have any responsibilities besides, like, work. I put a lot of energy into work and, like, felt very fulfilled by that at the time. So I think it's important, my point is basically to find things in your life that make you happy or, like, can give you joy in times when you're feeling very low. For me, like, figuring out who I was, like, it really empowered me and made me feel like an amazing person, and I felt like I would have an amazing opportunity that a lot of people don't have.
My advice, Kat, if you were wondering,
I am.
I would say focus on aspects of your life that you used to enjoy a lot and that you would be open to revisiting. Like, hey, you know what? I haven't written, like, a short story in a while. I think I'll do that. Or, hey, I haven't talked to this certain person in a while. Now that I have more time, I might develop a friendship with that person. The last time you were on the podcast, Riley, I gave the advice of, if you have, like, an acquaintance, call them up and go out and explore that person a little bit more. Just exploring other people would be a wonderful new thing to do. It's wonderful, it's scary, but try it out.
Yeah, and, like, if you're going through a breakup or you're, like, you have, like, this life change that's happening, leaning on other people, I think, is really important. Like, telling other people in your life that you need help, that you need support, I think is really important because that will really help you get through things. Like, if you're going through a breakup, chances are your friendships maybe aren't as strong as when you were a single person, because, you know, that happens in relationships. And so just really focusing your energy on like other aspects of your life, like friendship or like other things that you enjoy. And that, I think, will help you feel better about the situation that you're in and really help you heal. And also knowing that if you feel sad or bad, that's okay. It's okay not to feel great. You don't feel great 100% of the time. It's okay to live in that a little bit, but to know that that's not permanent. Just like allow yourself some time to heal.
I am not sorry for what I'm feeling.
I love that.
There you
Yes.
I love it. We're never as alone as we might feel. So there's always going to be somebody there.
Yeah, listening to
For
other
sure.
people talk about heartbreak, you realize that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yes.
So let's wrap it up with some final thoughts. Riley, do you have any final thoughts on your hand?
Thank you so much. This has been a really great conversation.
I agree.
And I love Gage and Kat. I love your friendship and that you guys are so open with each other. I think that's so awesome.
Yeah, I think that's really
Thank
cool.
you.
I was a little nervous talking about it with Eleanor, who's a bit of a stranger to me. Even you, Riley, you're a bit of a stranger to me as well. But
Right.
yeah, thank you guys for being so open. I feel like I know you guys a lot better after this experience.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
I'm sorry, did I interrupt your final thought?
No, that was it.
Oh, okay. Eleanor, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with Riley. I think to your point, Gage, like, I just think it's cool to be open, and if you're vulnerable with strangers, we say a lot on the podcast, vulnerability is the first thing you expect in somebody, but the last thing you're willing to give to somebody else.
I love that line.
So I always try to remind myself of that. Like, ultimately, like, people find vulnerability very endearing and appreciate it, and it allows you to kind of have conversations like this.
Also, well, I guess this bundles in with my final thought. My final thought is, if you're sort of a vulnerable person, own it. Wear it as armor. Even if you're just having a conversation, you're like, hey, how are you doing today? Not feeling great. You know, this and this happened. People don't expect it, but it opens you up as a person, and it makes you a little more likable.
Yeah.
What about you, Kat? You got any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Well, I thought this was a really, really awesome conversation. And it's nice to know that, like I said earlier, we're never as alone as we think we might feel. There's always going to be somebody out there to either listen to you or validate you. Yes, the end.
Kat, by the way, congratulations on co-hosting your very first podcast.
Yeah!
I think you absolutely
Thank
killed it.
you. Thank you for having me.
Killed it.
Had some fantastic guests for me to
Oh,
co-host alongside.
But before we go, Kat, I'm doing a new thing on the podcast where I have the guest issue a challenge to us.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so the challenge could be anything that we talk
To
today
you,
on
to
an
you
emotional
too?
side. To us two, or it could
And
just
the
be to me.
listeners? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Got it.
And then on the next podcast, Kat and I are going to talk about that experience of the podcast.
I love that.
So it could be talk to someone new or ask someone out that you have been crushing on for quite some time. Any challenge that comes to your particular mind? Like, Gage, I think it would be awesome if you did this. Or Kat, I think it would be great if you
Learned how to ride a unicycle.
learned how to ride a unicycle. Yeah, not that crazy, preferably.
I have a good one. Okay, so Riley and I both have like really been working on this, but I'm gonna challenge the two of you to speak your truth to somebody you know.
Ooh, yes, I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
Speak the
So
truth.
yeah, if there's something you feel like you need to say to someone, you could really say it.
Say it.
Okay.
That is absolutely horrifying, and I'm excited to do
It's
it.
scary.
I can't wait
It's
to hear
scary,
it.
but you feel amazing after you do it.
Yeah.
Then you also have like a little bit of it, what we call vulnerability hangover, but those are good too.
So is it something like I've been holding in for quite some time that I have to say that?
What's your truth? Just speak your truth. Like, I recently told somebody, I was like, I feel like there's always been something between us, and I just want to tell you that is a feeling that I've had.
I love that so much.
I semi-recently was able to talk to an ex to tell them exactly how I felt about everything and really just like speak to like what I was feeling through the breakup, and it really helped me like release a lot of those feelings. So that's something that I did.
But I think on the other side of the coin, like obviously Riley and I did something that was very like relationship, but I think like even speaking your truth, Riley says I do this a lot, but just being like, hey, I miss you, or hey, I love you, or anything like that, I think is also owning your feelings and speaking your truth to somebody else.
Yeah.
Well, we will tell you all about how we speak the truth
Yeah.
next time on Almost Adults. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Oh, if you want to follow Riley and Eleanor, I forgot your name for a millisecond.
That's okay. I do it all the time.
Listen to the Breakup Podcast. You guys want to plug anything?
Yeah, you can listen to it on iTunes or SoundCloud, at the Breakup Podcast on Instagram, thebreakuppodcast.com, at the Breakup Pod on Twitter. We have a Facebook page. Literally, just like look us up. You can find us. You can talk to us. You can email us, and we're all in this together. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see how beautiful Eleanor is. You can slide into
And
her
Riley.
DMs.
And
Yeah,
Riley.
shout out to
That.
Eleanor's DMs.
Yeah, so we always
I
like
love
to
it.
promote
She's
that.
gorgeous.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
That's been Almost Adults. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.